much. It's guests should be comfortable. I should be comfortable.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I've brought some books
Magic.
with me
Interesting.
that you might find interesting.
I of course have your book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
These are kind of things that I'm kind of behind the thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, but my thinking about things.
I can see some trend there. I did finish the book.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Oh, that's
Pretty
good.
much finished.
I think you might be the first.
I went through it quicker than I thought I would. Because and welcome to the podcast, Jim.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you here, finally,
Nice to be
after
here.
a bit of back and forth.
Yes, it has been a little bit,
Of
yeah.
our conversation. We're saying, so this is your first time you've been on a podcast. You've done
It
radio
is.
stuff.
That's right, yeah.
What radio stuff have you done?
Oh, God. Just mainly, local radio things when
Okay.
I'm doing events.
Are
Basically,
you
that's
doing
pretty much-
Lincoln City Radio or?
I haven't done Radio Lincolnshire.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So, yeah. With this, I've got something to talk about as well. So
You do. Well
maybe I ought to kind of contact some radio people about this as well. Yeah.
Well, we'll go with the hardest question first.
Oh, dear. Right. Okay.
What do you do, Jim?
What do I do? Okay. What do I do? I'm mainly a composer.
Okay.
I've been writing music for a long, long time. But that kind of leads into all sorts of other things. And I started working with words in the 90s and found I enjoyed it. And there was something about there being less pressure than my main my main artistic
Idea.
idea
Yeah.
or genre or whatever.
Occupation.
So occupation.
Yeah.
So mainly a composer. But when I started working with words, I found I could. I hadn't got the baggage I was carrying around with the musical side of things. So I work with words. I work with sound.
Yeah.
So yes.
It's a nice interblend then between you.
It is. Yeah, it is.
So with your composing work, is that all instruments or is that specific?
Well, it's mainly either piano or electronics.
Okay.
And at the moment, I'm working a lot on this Denizen project with lots of battery-powered synths. The idea being that I found a battery amp and a mixer that can run on batteries as well. So the entire thing could literally be performed anywhere.
That's kind of cool because you've got like a nice
yeah.
little analog side of
Absolutely.
something quite digital.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
you've plugged something
Yeah.
manual into, and I quite like that. That's
And what I
nice.
like about the piano is that everything I write for piano has some fluidity to it. It has a sense that you can alter it, and each performance or recording or anyone wanting to play it will result in a slightly or even sometimes radically very different outcome depending on who's doing it.
Yeah.
So that aspect fulfills a kind of free-flowing, expressive or responsive sort of side of things, whereas the electronics, I quite like working with things that are very mechanical. So you're creating a more of an object in sound. So I like the contrast between the two.
That's really interesting.
So be able to have two different, very different approaches to music.
Because music to me, I mean, if anything, I'm a visual artist.
Okay.
When I create things,
Yeah.
I've done. I think during uni, I did some experimentation with sound art, which I loved doing. I absolutely loved it. I got really into is it Merzbow, he does a lot of like sound installations and stuff like that, and Archie was introduced to a lot of that kind of thing. And I went down like the video art line of doing things, which is something I don't really do nowadays, which is a bit sad. But I do a lot of illustration stuff. So when people talk about music and sound, to me it's fascinating because it's something which I've never even thought of. That's something I could kind of like go into. I studied clarinet in school and can play guitar at like a very basic garage band level. But when someone comes along and says, yeah, I compose music, I'm like, you what? You you take sound and you write it down? That's insane. So yeah, it kind of fascinates me of how you get into that. So you used to say as well, like with it being kind of seeing piano as more as like an organic flowing thing, and then leading into something more structured and mechanical. Whereas I always think of piano as quite a structured thing.
Okay.
Because I grew up on wood instruments and with air affecting everything, whereas piano is just keys. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. In a sense, it is. Yeah. So on that whole side of things, the piano is possibly the more mechanical, of that side of what I'm describing. So we've got the digital sort of electronic stuff, and I see what you mean, because I would agree that the piano, yes, is in the more fixed,
functional.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it still classed as a string instrument, the piano?
Percussion, actually, I think.
Percussion.
Yes. Yeah.
This is, again,
because the hammers hit.
You got the hammers on the strings, but I'm like, but I guess I could do that on a violin. Would it then be a percussion instrument?
Into a sort of dulcimer, sort of something. Yeah.
I mean, so this is the first podcast I've had to do homework for.
Okay.
In the sense of, you handed me a book prior, and I was like, okay, I will have to read this book. And I have read your book.
You have, yeah.
I have. I've read it page to page.
I'm impressed.
All 37 pages. And I find it very interesting.
Okay.
I find it interesting from the idea of, again, because in a way it's you're a composer, musician, that kind of realm of things. I found it quite interesting to read something knowing that. Because if I'd have read this not knowing that, I feel like it could have come from any artistic medium. It could have come from visual art. It could have come from other things like that. But knowing you're into composing and knowing you're into your sound stuff, it kind of put a different slant on it, just kind of in my head, because it was like, if I'd have read this in terms of, I've read manifestos before, which is what the Denizen Handbook is your manifesto.
It's claiming to be.
It's claiming to be your manifesto. I've read like the Dadists manifesto.
Yes.
And all those ones, and you kind of look at it and you go, okay, yeah, the way they word things is very visual. It's very along the lines of, you picture it and you go, yes, if I saw that piece of artwork, I could see how that relates to that manifesto. So when kind of reading yours, I was thinking of it, it's like, well, I'm not going to see this. I'm not. Okay. There's no visual aspect to come out of this because it's written by a composer.
Yes,
it's something I'd hear, and then I was like, would I hear it? Would I knowing having read this manifesto, if someone else read it and took this on and said, this is going to be the way I make work? And I was like, I don't know if that would. I don't know if I'd be able to pick that up. But I don't know if that's just me because I'm not into doing that kind of stuff, or whether you think you could see that. Would you recognize someone else taking on your life's work? In
a sense, I'm feeling I feel it's kind of irresponsible, this book, because I have no idea if there are consequences to it, in the sense that somebody else might choose to work by it.
There's sugar there.
Thanks. It's from my point of view at the moment, it only exists as something I've written in response to some of my work.
Okay.
So, in a sense, I don't know what the consequences are of having written it down, having published it.
Yeah, and put it out for free consumption.
I do say as in the book that I do question whether anybody listening to my work would benefit from reading it, and my conclusion is probably not, because that's not the point. I think I would like people to hear the music and respond to it.
Yeah.
Person to person. I don't need them to sort of subscribe to a particular way of thinking.
I think it's interesting because it's like, in a way, it's like you've published your own cliff notes, in a way.
Okay.
Like when you read a novel and someone comes along and says, "Oh, here's all the short form of what I've made."
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
And I think that's quite interesting. I think that's true with any manifesto. I think with any artist statement, any website or anything anyone puts out, even these podcasts for me, these inform you a lot about the stuff which I create
Yeah.
without even intention. You know, so you do remove a little bit of the mystery to it, because people can then do their background research on you, can't you? You know, they go, oh, I've seen this piece of work I really like. I say, oh, you've got a book. I'll read the book, and then it tells them a little bit more. So I think it's nice to have that out in the world. But I do get what you're saying. It can feel a little bit irresponsible, because you are putting extra information about yourself.
Yeah, well, there's that element.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking of whether somebody would act on this.
Okay.
You know,
Would you like someone to? I mean, I guess that's the question. Like, you put it out there. How would you feel if someone came up and said, "No, this is how I did the book"?
think it's. I stand by it.
Okay.
I do stand by it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you published this year, didn't you?
yes.
Yeah.
I do stand by it, but I also think that I was very attracted to. I mean, you mentioned the Dada manifesto, and the futurists did one, didn't they? Sort of yelling it from a stage, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
And that whole era, the sort of early 20th century, there was a lot of so many sort of new ideas.
Excuse me.
Sort of challenging new ideas, and one of the things people seem to know a lot about the sort of the more visual art or sort of art manifestos, but it was happening in music as well. And there's an Austrian composer, Josef Matthias Hauer. Hauer, and he wrote a couple of treatises, he called them, but they were they're manifestos of a kind.
Yeah.
And he talks about this idea called melos, and this melos is runs through all of life and the world, the universe, and all of this, and everything is based on the universal truth of the number 12, and there are 12 musical notes, and then therefore they represent a cosmology of some sort, and then this melos would flow through the music, and it would represent the sort of ultimate truths and universal something or other balance and all this. And I've read quite a lot about him. I've read his books. Yeah. I have no idea what he's talking about, but there's something sort of there was that whole apart from the sort of the mechanizing of things at that time. There was also that sort of there was the whole sort of theosophical influence, wasn't there? The Madame Blavatsky and all of that, and so they were sort of a strange mix between sort of having a revolutionary new rational kind of artwork, including music, and sort of having this sort of this almost fantastic out of this world view of some sort of cosmic order or something similar to that, and so I wanted to bring some of that into my manifesto, and it came out of when I first moved to Lincoln in 2012. I started writing about the waterways of Lincoln in a series of compositions. I wrote these nocturnes, 5 nocturnes based on the Fosdyke Canal. Okay. So then I've done various other waterways around Lincoln, and people keep asking me. Well, the thing that kept coming up was now you're influenced by and you're inspired by these waterways, and I'm thinking of influence and intuition and inspiration, these sort of things. They just didn't feel right to me. I kind of wanted to try and address those, and then basically people were asking me, how do you get from a waterway in Lincoln to a composition, sometimes involving words, sometimes not? And I thought I'd address that, but I'm addressing it in a way which is kind of, what I know, and then sort of projecting out into an unknown.
Okay.
That area about all that I don't understand. And I don't think I've ever been inspired. I put in these words: affinity, affiliation, and affirmation.
Yeah.
I kind of have an affinity with a place, and I have an affiliation to an art movement and affirmation is that is kind of an anti-criticism statement.
Yeah.
I see nothing valuable in a critic in the sense of what they do is demolish somebody's work. I want to see us all affirming and sort of finding the strengths in what we're doing and what other people are doing, and helping us to kind of build them and build on them. So it's a challenge to the idea of inspiration. It's a challenge to the idea of inspiration and.
It'll come to you. It'll come to you.
Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get going.
That's the starting point.
It's, in a way, you're taking that. I mean, it's happening to me now. My brain's just gone blank. You're taking that whole idea of being questioned on your work, and in a way, trying to give people that insight of just how you come to that conclusion.
Yes.
Which is, as an artist, is very hard to do. It's something which I've had numerous conversations about on this podcast when someone's kind of sat and said, "How do you do what you do? How do you?" Because I produce a lot of work. I keep going. I just keep furthering out work. The way I say is kind of it's compulsive creativeness. You can't really stop it, or I can't really stop it. So trying to translate that to people and say, "Oh, hey, this is how you could do it." There's a few formulaic ways of narrowing down my abstract into something which you could kind of get. So I get that kind of idea. I found interesting the statement which you had at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Which kind of, I mean, going with what you just said and the whole idea of like being one-on-one with artists and that sort of thing. And I always find that interesting because artists vary so much in terms of what they want from other artists.
Okay, yeah.
Because I've had conversations before of people saying we have to be completely supportive of all other artists. We should, everyone should look to raise each other up, and we should all be helping and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of disagree.
Okay, yeah.
From the point of view, I think that conflict creates better art. Mm-hmm. It creates more challenging art.
Yes.
It creates you to consider your own work. So when someone comes along as competition, they're not necessarily saying, what you're doing is bad and I'm better than you. All they're saying to you is, you should up your game a little bit. This is what I'm doing. I've taken, what you're doing and what you're creating. So you can raise yours a little bit, and we can help each other do that by competing, essentially.
Yes, that's fine. But that doesn't rule out affirmation.
No, it doesn't.
You can still be affirming of somebody's work, even if what you're doing is apparently completely opposing.
I think
so,
one of the best examples of that comes from rap music. Okay. Because a lot of rap musicians, obviously rap as a genre is about bravado. 90% of it is about ego. It's about bravado. Regardless of what you're rapping about, there'll be one or two verses which are "I'm the best," it's not everybody else. And then they meet other rappers, and you're like, well, you can't all be the best, can you? You can't all be there. It's like, well, yeah, we're all saying that we're the best, but we're not saying we're the best to say this other person's terrible.
Okay.
We're saying we're all the best. Now prove you're better than me.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of thing.
Fair enough.
Increase your bounds. Because I found it interesting you saying, there's a line of no more feeble and weak artist statements, which made me think you'd read some feeble and weak artist statements.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you don't name names.
You go to a gallery, you see somebody's artist statement, and you. It's the idea that it's interesting because you said about artists working in so many different ways, but that pressure to write that artist statement for a gallery or for an exhibition, you've got to kind of. I feel sometimes people are trying to think just trying to get some words down. You know,
Yeah.
they've maybe been given 200 words or something, and they've got to kind of.
I love when artists have to write about themselves when, for their entire lives, they've learned how not to talk about themselves and how to create art about themselves.
Yes.
Because you've gone, okay, I've spent 20, 30 years of my life learning to paint everything I feel inside, so I didn't have to write it down.
Yes.
I need an agent.
Pretty much.
That's what you need.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's the other line as well, like we were just saying, persuasion perhaps, but conversion never.
Yeah.
Of having conversations with artists and conflicts, and I thought that was a really nice line.
Yeah, because
Yeah, it's just that kind of you can exchange ideas, you can exchange conflict, and you will try and convince the other person, which in a way a manifesto does try to do.
Yeah.
But in a way, it hardens your resolve. I find.
Okay. Yeah.
Because someone comes and says you're doing that wrong, and I'm like, am I doing that wrong? Or can I do this more my way?
Yeah.
Push it the other way.
Well, what I'm saying there is that thing about criticism. If all it is a negation of something else.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have something constructive, then say the constructive thing.
Yeah.
And it may be completely opposite to what I'm saying.
I'm kind of curious.
Sure.
Kind of what your background is outside of compositions and things like that, because in a way this is quite formatted. In terms of, I mean, you have your chapters and you break them down into individual points, and it reminded me a lot of when I read notes from Sartre and on existential and humanism, because that was from a lecture, and it was broken down into questions essentially people had asked him during this lecture. So it was just notes, and it was going on in that kind of way. So I'm kind of like, how did you come to that conclusion of doing it like this, or is that part of the Denizen way?
Well, no, the absolute honest truth about that is that I was writing down ideas, and I was aware of the Tractatus. It's Wittgenstein, isn't it? Tractatus, and that he did everything as in sort of clauses and subclauses and things.
Okay, yeah.
And I just thought I like that idea.
Yeah.
So I'll do something similar.
Also,
so really, there's more of a sort of that seems like a good idea, particularly.
I mean, to be honest, it reminded me of as well as when you get Bibles.
Yes, exactly.
And they've got those little brief passages and brief notes.
Like, chapters and verses and all of that. Yeah,
keeps it fairly formulaic, which again, I mean, it leads into what you're saying about the whole idea of taking something and getting more into that form of like doing with your digital art and construct and that kind of stuff. This is as final as you can get, really.
As what? Sorry.
It's as final as you can get. So like with music, obviously, there's always a chance to edit it.
Yeah.
Once it's printed,
it
becomes an extra thing.
Yes.
Do you think you could see yourself down the line doing another one? The Handbook Mark 2, version 2?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, it might be a correction of it. I don't know.
I don't know. In a way with manifestos, I always feel like, kind of like the Constitution in the US, where they don't edit it, they just add an extra bit.
Extra clause.
It's just, we've said this over here.
Yeah.
But clause 13
is
this and the other. I feel like you could go that way with it. Or just keep meandering back. Of like, no, I've decided now. This is the new way. This is the new way.
I have realised I've got to relinquish control of it, because with anything creative, you can't
dwell on it.
You can't determine how people are going to respond to it.
No.
It's not,
have you had any negative response to it?
Not yet. No, but
I mean, obviously, we hope we don't get a negative response.
Well, I think I kind of warn people off in my initial statement. I mean, if somebody wanted to criticise it, I'd just let the criticism stand. I wouldn't see any point in kind of continue to argue its position.
I feel like with the things you say in it, I feel like even if you did get criticism, in a way you could wear that as a little badge.
Oh, maybe,
just this, in a way, you've done exactly what was intended to do. You put a statement out saying this is how I personally do what I do. If you disagree, then you're just not doing what I do. In a way.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
How did you kind of come around with the name, the Denizen?
Well,
because obviously you're Jim Simm, but You're also the Denizen.
Yes.
Do you make a separation between that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah, yeah. I've been I've lived in a number of places. Born in Nottingham, lived in Newcastle, London, Brighton before moving here.
That is a lot of places.
Out of those places, Brighton is the place that I would consider the home, my home. That is the place I've most felt at home, and I've felt that moving to Lincoln at the age I did, and in the way that I did, that I would never feel like I could be from Lincoln. And in that sense, there was something different from being a citizen of Lincoln. And I was aware of the word denizen, and one of the dictionary definitions is somebody granted citizenship of a place.
Okay.
And I felt that I could be a denizen of Lincoln, but never a citizen or never somebody from Lincoln. For that reason, the Denizen is a sort of an outsider name.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that because I can get a different view. I mean, I've written music about based at Stamp End Lock, and most people from Lincoln laugh immediately when I say that because. What Stamp End? Why would you write music about Stamp End? Because it's, I mean, to me, it's a really nice area. But in the sort of hierarchy of places to live in Lincoln, it's not the most sought after area.
No.
But
I
it's,
to an outsider,
spent a long time in the East End of London, and I think Stamp End looks pretty lovely to me.
I mean, there is a lot of curiosity to it because I'm originally from Scunthorpe.
Okay.
So I'm only up the road, and I'm very much a person who I've never felt like I'm of a place.
Okay.
Even Scunthorpe.
Well, that's really good.
You know, it's never been a factor in my life geography wise. My brother lives in Nottingham. So I'm over there on a fairly regular basis, and there's never been anywhere like I've just gone, yeah, that's very me. At most, I can say I'm English, and
okay.
that's kind of a point. So when you go to other cities, and you kind of, I always find it nice and interesting when you meet friends, and you say, oh yeah, I went down this way, and it's like, why did you go down there? There's nothing down there. I was like, well, to you, there's nothing down there, but to me, who's never seen any of this, it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking at it going, I haven't seen this building before.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one either.
Yeah.
It's just a random street. But yeah, it's really nice because I went to Canada last year. Took myself on a bit of a road trip, and it's just like going around things. I spoke to a few Canadian friends. Like, why did you go to this random town in between two major cities where there's nothing there? I was like, yes, there's nothing there, but there is a museum about canoes, and I found that fascinating because I've never seen a museum about canoes before. I was like, but to me, that seemed amazing. And there's a niceness in just being a little bit outside of things.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, do you think do you think it affects your work in the sense of if you were somewhere like you're saying where you feel at home? Do you think the work you make there greatly differs from the work you make outside of being there?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find it easier or harder to make work away from?
Easier.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why so?
Why
do you think anyway? I know there's no definitive answer.
Well, since I was a teenager, I've always liked going to places that are not quite city, or they're a bit kind of off the beaten track, old railway tracks, and there's a place near where I grew up that had been a big rail yard that had been torn up, but it still had gun emplacements and things from the Second World War, and there were all these concrete bunkers and things.
Yeah.
I realised some maybe 10, 15 years ago, that there was a term for this, and that was edgelands.
Okay.
And there's a book on my pile there by...
Called Edgelands.
Yeah, Paul Farley and Michael Simmons Roberts.
Yep.
And it defines the edgelands, really.
Okay.
The chapter titles, there are canals in the chapter titles, car parks and all sorts of things. Shopping centre car parks, out of town retail parks.
Yeah.
Canal sides are particularly edgeland, I think. And
Yeah.
I've come to the conclusion that in Lincoln anyway, there's all of the waterways in Lincoln are edgelands, because so many of them are drainage channels.
Yeah.
It's only the canal and the Witham going out past Stamp End that is navigable. There are lots of other waterways, but none of them are navigable, because you've got the Witham going down to the south of the city.
Yep.
You've got Sinsel Dyke as well, which is a drainage channel.
Yeah.
Main drain, and there's a main drain and a something else drain. But lots of them.
Yeah.
And but most of them are quite natural. You see sort of flows of beautiful sort of water plants, and then that somebody's thrown a shopping trolley into, and but they get fished out. Now, I was fascinated by the idea that on Sinsel Bank, people have there's a voluntary team of people who go in and clear out all the rubbish, and so actually most of the time it's just a beautiful stream going through the city. Definitely, that people hardly notice.
I think that's one where you kind of, I think is it when you're down Portland Street and down that way, and you're just kind of looking at these massive concrete rivers, and you're just looking at them, you're just going, okay, well, these are just here, and then you keep an eye. I always find them fascinating when it rains heavy. And then they're about 3 foot deeper than you think. You're like, I don't actually know where the bottom of this is when you look at. Like, I'm seeing it and I'm thinking that's got to be fairly close to the bottom, because this is a very deep drop. And at the same time, thinking maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't dive into there to save somebody if that situation came.
Well, just after I moved here, and it was this was also really attractive to me, that I met a friend of my mum's who'd lived in this area, literally our area, the whole of her life. She must have been in her 80s by then. And she stopped me once along the Brayford, and she said, is it true that Brayford goes on forever? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. And she said, well, that it doesn't have a bottom, it just goes on forever. Okay. And I wanted to laugh, and then I thought, what? I said, no, I don't think it's actually that deep. Yeah. And it occurred to me that it's quite possible that as a child, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, there were no barriers in those days, 70, 80 years ago, that she was probably told not to go near the water because it goes
on forever.
It goes on forever, and she'd held that all her life.
That's quite interesting.
But I won't ridicule that, because although it's funny, it's also incredibly appealing. That idea of that you can have in your hold in your mind an idea like that, and. Your whole life.
That's
really
interesting. So when we were in uni, we had a clutch of international students on our course. I think they're from Catalan.
Okay.
And there was a couple of them made short films which were tragedies. They were, it was, romance and usual student short film fodder. Everyone makes terrible films in uni. That's what we do. Everyone's shot a black and white film where someone commits suicide. That's the standard thing in uni. But they kind of made these films, and it was a really dramatic score. It was bombastic orchestral music which they'd ripped somewhere from online, and it was romantic, shot along the Brayford. You saw this couple, and then we were watching it and we were like, we can't figure out where this film's going, can't figure out what's going to happen in this film. And then in a shot, the gentleman turned around, and his partner fell into the Brayford. And the whole idea was that she'd fallen into the Brayford and disappeared and drowned, as though it was the ocean, because the next shot he showed was of the ocean. And we were there going, what? This doesn't track. This doesn't track in terms of what we know of the area. And then we're like, hang on a minute. No, to an international student who's going to go home and show this to their friends and family, this will make sense, because there's nothing to say the Brayford isn't the ocean. It's just a huge waterway in the middle of everything. And we were standing there fascinated. We were like, well, you kind of have to change it because we all know. But at the same time, that's incredible. You've interpreted in that way. You've just seen this body of water and gone, actually, no, I can make this look vast in terms of what's there. Because I find waterways interesting because I don't feel like I could ever live next to an ocean.
No. Okay.
Because I find it too inviting and scary at the same time.
Okay, yeah.
Like I don't like being on boats.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't like being on boats, and I don't like the idea of vastness of water. But I like being near rivers and lakes.
Yeah.
Like I love being in Derbyshire and lake districts and stuff like that because I'm surrounded by trees.
Yes.
With a body of water.
Yes. Yeah.
But when I look at the ocean, I'm sat there going,
Okay.
I don't know. But then I think I don't know if that's because I'm from small towns and. I'm from small towns in Lincolnshire and not kind of trapped.
And I mean, the thing about you can be if you're on the south coast of England, you've got you've got France 23 or so miles away, not far away, and that just feels like it could be the Atlantic Ocean. It could be, every coast is vast, isn't it? Yeah. In that sense,
I've been to Jersey, and stood on the shore of there, and I remember my dad pointing out that you could see France because it's just the bottom of France. And I was like, don't I need binoculars? He's like, no, it's just there, literally. We could be there in the day. I was like, oh, that's strange. Okay. The idea of being in.
Also, isn't it right out far enough into the Atlantic to be able to see? To be in an ocean, I don't know how far it.
I can't quite remember. It's like it's that little cluster of islands at the base of France. And my geography is terrible, so I might be making complete set nonsense. It's kind of hooked in there, and you kind of see, and you can travel to France for the day, and it was just that idea of you can get on a boat and go to this whole other language as well, because Jersey's mainly English speaking. Yeah. Because of our occupation and whatnot, and our occupation, the German occupation, and all that kind of stuff, and that just fascinates me. That idea, because in England you're like, well, if you cross a river, yes, you're still in England. You can cross bridges and still be in England. You get on a boat, you're still in England. Yes, but you cross that one, and you're like, no, that's another. But at the same time, I don't know if it'd be more interesting to be landlocked. Yes, as a country, I don't know.
But thinking specifically about the Brayford, there was this particular thing that I wanted to, I put right at the beginning, because I didn't want to, I wanted to explore ideas, but I didn't want to suggest that I expected anybody to sort of believe in a particular thing. I talk about divining, dowsing, ley lines, all sorts of things. I don't expect anybody to believe in those things. I just expect us all to, for the purpose of the book and for the purpose of the artworks I'm making, to go with it, I suppose. And I put it like this. I am, whether for a short or long time, inhabiting an idea, but I do not inhabit the idea fully. Then I say, I ask that we don't get stuck with not believing in such things. The level of belief may fluctuate, but the concept remains. While it remains, it exists. While it exists, I occupy it, and I am occupied by it. It was that thing from Kath and the endless Brayford that made me realise that I didn't have to know a fact about the depth of the Brayford. It was the idea, and that's it's interesting you took that on to the editing of it going from sort of inland waterway to ocean. Yeah.
I found it. I was kind of just flicking through then, and there's a section which I'm just going to flick back to if I can find it, which I found really interesting because I found as I was reading it, you do make a lot of effort to open your idea to people, to make it accessible, because you actually make a statement, and then once you've made that statement, you go, okay, but this is my statement, and you just were trying to open your view to include my statement.
Right. Okay.
So to avoid people kind of saying, "Oh, well, you've said this, so we must follow this one line." There's still enough room for people to kind of move around it, essentially,
Sure, okay.
which I really liked that whole idea.
Good.
It was in your miscellaneous notes.
Okay.
In the invocation section.
Yeah.
Where you just start to list things you invoke, and I thought this is really nice because you've been on such a journey up to that point of things which you were kind of saying and how to live, but leaving so much room in that original section. But then you get to your invocations in this: I invoke the Eldritch of the supernatural, I invoke all aspects of divination as means of transformation, I invoke a very specific ontology based around the concepts of discernment and perception, and it goes on. And I was like, that's really nice because it's taken everything you've said and then just stamped at the end, no, this is what I've said, and these are things which I invoke, and I've worked into this, just to remind you in a way. And I thought that was really nice. It was a nice round out to it, that section at least.
Thanks. Yeah.
I mean, so I find writing not mind-numbing, but a challenge. Did you enjoy writing this? Did it help? Do you find it cathartic doing it?
I'm not sure cathartic is the word, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Cathartic.
I mean, cathartic's a word I use a lot, so we may use it differently.
Yeah, I suppose to a certain extent. You've got the ideas out somehow. Yeah. But the invocation section started as being under the miscellaneous notes. It was just going to be a list of things I was interested in. Yeah. So the Eldritch and the supernatural, all aspects of divination. So it was a list, and then it occurred to me that there was the sort of the urban weird and the Eldritch and the weird and the eerie aspects of what I'm talking about, and then invocation just seemed to be. It occurred to me that invoking those things was pretty much the summary of the book. So
it was just.
But it came around gradually, really.
It was nice as well because it's kind of it's because it's near the end of the book. It's that kind of call to action in a sense.
I guess so.
Like you're saying,
and a summary.
Yeah, at the beginning where you're saying you were a bit worried about it. Felt like it was a bit reckless. Essentially, it shuffles off all that for you because it goes, I've said all this, but I still invoke you to read and to go out and do and embrace it, or as little or as much as you feel you should embrace it. Essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, as well, I liked the. I really enjoyed you kind of. I don't know. Is it you? What's the word? Creation of words, like where you've got a micro track. And things like that, because it gives it its own language. It gives it its own kind of theory, and like I remember reading, I think it might have been Guy Debord or Sartre again, where it's kind of there's a lot of French phrases thrown in, and I kept having to remind myself what those words meant.
Okay, yeah.
Whenever I reread it, I'm like, there's a phrase and I can't remember what it is. But it's kind of one of those ones of just accepting it as is. If we look at something and we accept it as it is, that's as it is. And I was like, oh, okay, but it's nice because it gives you your own little personal stamp of, when I talk about this, I'm talking about this, which is in depth. And I think it was really nice. Really nice to read. Right. I mean, in terms of recklessness, do you think of it in terms of this could do damage?
I think people could misunderstand it or misinterpret it. Yeah, but I think I've been fairly careful to sort of to put enough subclauses in to hope that people might sort of get clarify what I am actually saying.
I guess the fear with anything like this is that you could you could pick and choose what you want.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You could say, I'm going to take, this paragraph tells me I can
yes,
do this.
And then quote.
So therefore, I can go off and do this. But you kind of cover yourself nicely.
But people are always doing that, aren't they? You can't really.
I mean, you can't control that. That is why you have to get away from the work you create, in a sense.
Yeah.
I know I've had. Podcast is a great example of that. We chat for an hour. I've chatted with, this will be 131.
Right.
So, that's 131, half of those with guests and strangers, where I can say one throwing another in the space of an hour. I don't edit it. I do go back and watch it on occasion, but it's not something I kind of delve into.
Okay.
So when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, well, you said this on a podcast," I'm like, "Did I? Because that was 3 years ago, and I don't really remember saying that." But it's interesting to have that discussion, kind of thing. Do you think it's something you'll kind of revisit down the line as a way of looking at your work? Do you think your work will evolve away from it now that you've written it out? Or
no, the Denizen is a specific project.
Okay.
It's a Jim Simm project, and I in the 80s I invented the umbrella of sound kiosk, which pretty much everything of mine comes under.
Yeah.
And the Denizen's a specific project within that, so there will be music coming soon, and and performances, maybe more writings.
Yeah.
Maybe more writings. I'm going to publish a method that I'm using to compose music, which somebody could literally copy and do their own version of, because basically the structure and the outline is specified, but the content is open, so people could use that method, and that will be a supplement to this.
Supplement to the Denizen of how to make Denizen music. I think it's really nice to have. I keep using the word nice. It's a terrible word.
It's fine.
It's nice to have that as not the entire project, in a way. You've got this, but you've got extra things to add to it.
You wouldn't want to restrict it, I don't think. I'd like to feel it was sort of done.
Some people do with their
art.
Yes,
that's true.
And I find that fascinating, because I always say that work's never done. Even if I publish it, even if it's out there, because, like you're saying, with people being able to get hold of it and interpret it in their own way and use it for their own means, once it's out, it organically grows. You never know what it's going to become.
No.
So it's nice that you yourself have extras to it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You haven't put it out and gone, I'm done now. I can walk away. I've set my book up, and it's like, no, I've got this, and I'm proving it.
I'm a little cautious about promoting it.
Yeah.
But partly in the sense that I kind of have that.
No, I don't think you should be. From having read it, I don't think you should be cautious of promoting it. I think you should feel good about promoting it, because I mean, as I say, like I've read quite a few manifestos in a time. In fact, it's one of those things of I've never written a manifesto or an artist statement for myself. I have written one for the zine I make, which is the whole point. That has a manifesto, and it's clearly laid out. It's only short, it's only like a page. But it's one of those ones of, I always kind of wondered whether I'd write a manifesto. And then I read yours, and obviously you invoke people to write a manifesto. And I kind of sat there and go, but will I? Because again, like I always, for me, because it's like I don't have projects which are kind of encapsulated, it's all of everything. It would have to be for the entirety of everything I do. So it's kind of along those lines. So I think the fact that you've been able to distill your ideas into something formulaic and publishable is great. It's fantastic. I think some people should definitely read as well. Because, I mean, like you're saying, I mean, there's a lot in this of quite abstract things and concepts and stuff like that. But a lot of it as well it's just functional.
Okay.
I mean, you make statements about kind of like looking after your mind and your health.
Yeah.
It's that's quite a functional point.
Yes.
But for an artist, it's a very easy thing to forget.
Yes.
For a lot of artists.
That's true. Yeah.
I saw an interesting post on Instagram. I think it might have been this morning, actually. Friend of mine, Sam De Freitas, he's a painter, and he's really into exercise. has like a heavy exercise regime, does all these kinds of things, and was just curious if other artists did it. And I always find it interesting kind of seeing your Facebook stuff of like Jim stuff and bits and like that, and I'm like, for a lot of artists, you do forget to kind of just look after yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In a sense, so it's nice to again, it's having that in a manifesto which is about work, but has taken the time to say actually, you do have to look after yourself. Because there's that risk.
There's a question. I mean, the question in terms of how much you live by your words is a tricky one, because with them, I talk about psychogeography, and that comes out of situationism and Guy Debord, and the idea of a derive or a drift, and an action that you do, which was psychogeographical, if that's the term, and situationist is to walk the city with no specific aim, but and by doing that and drifting through the city, you reinterpret it, you misinterpret it, you challenge the structures that build a city. If you consider that in situationist terms that the city is a capitalist construct, that you view the structures of the city and you deconstruct them, or maybe that's too specific a term, but you reconstruct them maybe into having different meanings. And the idea of adding a sort of mystical element to it is kind of provocative in itself. And I argue that a human being in the city is re-enchanting a city. It is actually humans are nature. Humans in the city are also nature. So that's that. But the connection with Guy Debord is the idea that in drifting through the city, I've slightly lost where I was going with that, but the point being that you. Where did I start with this? Can you remember?
That's the beauty.
Just basically the idea that of where that comes from. I don't necessarily feel that I'm expressing the same argument that those people were. And yes, I've got back to where I was. Apparently, Guy Debord hardly did any of this drifting.
Okay, that's interesting.
He talked about it, and he discussed it with colleagues, and there was a philosophical aim to it. But I've read reports of him maybe doing 3 of these derives, and that was pretty much it.
I find that's incredibly fascinating, because I was recently listening to another podcast which was about the punk movement. And music and all those kinds of things, and the amount of essentially, obviously the whole punk genre was hugely vocal in pushing away oppressive regimes and challenging authority and fuck capitalism and fuck everything else and blah 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 blah, and going on down those lines, and then the amount of conversations which they had which revolved around McDonald's and how much they loved hamburgers and things like that, and I was like, that's incredibly fascinating, because you're putting out one expression, but your life, the logistics of life, just enforce you having to do one thing or another. Exactly. It reminds me of like you're saying with philosophers, and they say so much, they say all these things, and when you get artists as well, like Andy Warhol, and where you've got Studio 54 and all these different things where they're going, this is how lifestyle is, this is the way you art. But what I do in my own time is my own business. So in a sense, do you find you adhere more to this now that you've written it? Maybe?
I no more than before. Not really. But my challenge to that kind of thing is the sort of anti-capitalist approach to the city is sort of anti-commercial, and I think the best way to be anti-commercial is to do it subversively.
Yes.
So I write a whole section on how to perform subversive shopping.
Yeah.
And we do all sorts of subversive shopping. We do it by things like Free Cycle. I don't know whether that's still going. Or,
Yeah.
and all those sort of people reselling things, people giving things away online. I've got an old bed. Anybody want it? And this kind of thing is a subversion of shopping. And the idea of shopping sales is also subversive in the sense that it's that little bit of control the buyer has in the way a company operates to maybe get something that they'd seen earlier that was now cheaper. I don't know. There's sort of these little tiny things that might chip away at a commercial world.
I completely agree with that. So I do something which I'm planning on doing eventually, doing a podcast about what I call silent boycotting.
Sorry?
Silent boycotting.
Okay.
Which is essentially where you come across something and you don't agree with it. So you decide not to involve yourself into it. You find a shop you don't agree with, and you go, "Oh, I'm just never going to buy anything from that shop." But you don't tell anybody about it until somebody asks you, essentially. And I find that has way more impact, from my view, of how someone kind of interprets what you say to them. Because if you go online or you go to a friend and you're like, "Don't do this, don't go out and don't do this," so many people will react to it. They're automatically curious or defensive of what you're saying. Whereas if you just, you don't tell anyone, you just kind of stop doing it one day, suddenly there's a notice. It's like, "Oh, what? I never see you in there. Why do I see you in there?" It's like, "Oh, well, just a while back I decided I'm not going to do that." With the less you explain it in a way, the more people will adjust to your idea in a sense. But I just had a thought in terms of kind of the music and work which you've got coming out associated with this, and with you mentioning kind of that whole idea of psychogeography and going for these walks and everything like that. Do you think there's a better way or maybe a specific way to listen to the stuff you make? In terms of is it because obviously you're taking what you've said and all those kinds of things, the idea of having that on like a journey in my headphones or something like that might have more impact, or is it something where you think no, it's you sit down and you listen to it, or do you think I don't know?
I don't mind what people do really. I'm aware that people are on a range from some people who are so into their music that they'll put headphones on and sort of really completely envelop themselves in it, and there are other people that will have something on in the background while they're cooking or whatever. I don't care really and everything along the range from deep listening to peripheral ambient listening.
What kind of listener are you? As someone who makes music,
the problem is that I can't ever have music in the background because if most of the work I'm doing involves sound itself, so you can't have something else going, some other music while you're getting on with it. And when I'm trying to write with music in the background, my attention's constantly shifting to the music because I'm listening to detail within it and all sorts of stuff. So I can't listen to music like some people can. I can't not engage with it.
I mean, that leads me to a kind of a casual question of what is your daily listening? What kind of music do you listen to?
Oh God, really,
it's a huge question.
So many different things. I like things that are in some sense abstract, in the sense that they're not intended to have any meaning. I listen to mainly things without words because sometimes I think
that's my vacuum cleaner starting.
Words are
hang on.
Words are words distract from the music.
Yes.
So yeah.
Sorry, I'll stop him. Yeah. So you listen to a lot of more I mean, I was
instrumental
gonna use,
music,
instrumental. I was going to say
stuff
ethereal.
that doesn't have a particular narrative to it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of so
You do that. I mean, it's not to bring age into it. Obviously, you've been creating work for quite a while, so I imagine you have a fair range of genres which have kind of shifted throughout your work.
Yeah, I'm 59.
Yeah.
So I'm going back sort of the late 80s and early 90s. I was writing portraits of people in music.
Okay.
So I did. I was in London at the time, and I just decided to meet some interesting people. So Sarah Stallard is a designer. She now designs exhibitions for the Imperial War Museum. Paul Gambaccini. I went to his house to so I interview the person and I write them a piece of music afterwards.
Okay.
Always 30 seconds long, because the idea is that they were jingles for people. And I did really Gilbert and George as well. I interviewed them. Really.
Can't imagine how that would go.
No, they've got a terrible sense of humour. Really childish.
Really?
Yeah.
That's insane. You've had really a depth of things and experience to kind of get to where you are with kind of creating work.
I guess so. Yeah. With Gilbert and George, they just wanted to make stupid jokes, and they'd done a radio interview that week, and she said, "Do you think it's really responsible to do you think it's responsible to have words like shit and fuck in your paintings?" And they said, "Would you prefer us to use twat and cunt? Would they be better words?" And they're just like sort of kids, really.
It's just such a tongue-in-cheek methodology with it. Just
and they giggle all the time, you know. I did I went to their house, and I went and knocked on the door, and then the letterbox opened and said, "Who is it?" And I said, "I've got an appointment with you. It's 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning." They said, "We're still in bed. Come back in an hour." So I went back in an hour, and they were all in their suits and stuff, and ready for the interview. But
no, that's I mean, I find it interesting as well. You're saying of kind of like making portraits of other people and going from work which is in a way focused on other people to whereas obviously this is very you focused.
It's place focused.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, that's interesting.
I think it's place focused and ideas focused.
Yeah.
Is it me focused? Only in the sense of it's one person's perspective on a number of subjects.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that, and a lot of these people sort of walking places and then writing about it. It's people like Ian Sinclair, and there's a chap called Nick Papadimitriou, and all these people are sort of Gareth Rees. All these people sort of wander cities and edgeland areas and everything. I remember somebody sort of criticising the fact that it tended to be sort of older middle class white men. Yeah. And somebody responding, well, they have to have something to do. They might as well be doing this.
Got to keep them occupied, won't we?
Exactly. Yeah,
keeps them out of trouble, guys.
You might as well be walking around.
So what would you rather than be doing? This keeps them busy. I know. I find that's very interesting, especially you kind of saying kind of a generational thing. It reminds me of there's a line in a Studio Ghibli film where I think it's Howl's Moving Castle, where there's a young woman becomes an old woman, and she's like, I don't know why when I get older you just find you want to look at things. You know, she sat looking at the river or whatever it is. And she's like, you just find you want to look at things. And I'm like, I mean, to be fair, if I get to that age, that's what I do now. I just make it look like I'm doing stuff whilst I'm doing it, kind of thing. But no, it's a very, very interesting.
Longer time periods don't bother you so much when you're older.
I think we discuss this quite a lot between kind of me and my friends. I mean, I'm 30, and a lot of those are in their 20s, and like most of the people I work with outside of doing art and stuff, they're all in their 20s and early years, and they get worried about, you know, turning 22 or 25, and you sat there going, no. I mean, it seems like every bracket you get to puts your previous area into perspective. To a point where you kind of, when you do reach your 60s and 70s, you just look back and you're like, yeah, I'm just kind of looking around me at this point now, because
why not?
You know, you balance it.
If somebody told me a project would take me 5 years to complete, it wouldn't bother me.
Is this take 5 years?
No.
How quick has this come about? I'm curious.
About 2.5 years ago, I just started writing down, just have a notebook with me everywhere, just jot down everything that I think, my ideas and everything, and then it took about 6 months to assemble it together. Really,
Did you
get a sense of it?
Did you enjoy the assembly part, or did you enjoy the writing part?
The assembly part was I literally printed stuff out, then cut the thing into strips and then arranged it on a table.
That's exactly how it works, because when I did my book, I found the editing, the assembly and everything like that absolutely drained me. Writing it, creating it, I loved. It was fantastic. It felt like you were making something, and then you get to that end stamp and it just kind of stops me. It was just like, no, now I've got to do this, and I've got to figure out how to do Amazon publishing and all that nightmare. And I find it kind of took a wind out the sails. So then, once you're over that hump and it's out, you get that feeling of a bit of euphoria again. People can handle it and get hold of it. So in terms of work and stuff coming out, is that due this year? You thinking stuff will be out soon?
This year is now September, early next year, I think.
Running away this year, isn't it?
Exactly, Might as well just sort of cross it off and move on, I think.
But early next year?
Early next year, I think so.
Sounds come from you.
Then they... I've done one demo track that I sent you.
I had a listen.
Are we running out of time?
I mean, we've got a few minutes left.
Well, can I open up a question?
Go for it.
And this is one that I think about a lot. Can I read this section?
You can.
I printed it in bold on page 18.
I do know that section, because I wondered why it was printed in bold.
Each iteration of any truth is a new context for that truth, and so is a new, fresh and revitalised truth. The word truth here is meant in the sense of that which is perceived to be true. There is no claim beyond that which is perceived. For this reason, perceived truth must never be trusted implicitly. Within this, there is always danger, and the most thorough caution must be observed at all times. And that is how I see the idea of truth at all. It's a dangerous and incendiary word, truth. And that's both why I like using it and why I fear using it. But you could substitute the word idea for that, and a particularly artistic idea. And my idea of truth is based on is connected with the idea of originality. I don't quite get originality, because if somebody in whenever it was 1918 or something, the Duchamp's urinal gets in a gallery. If somebody 6 months later in Eastern Europe got the idea of putting a urinal in a gallery, would that be any less original? And the idea of truth is similarly, because I printed it in bold because almost everything I've said in here is only something that I've thought of and myself. I claim no truth for it being I make no claim for it being original, or that I've come up with the idea before somebody else. It's of no interest to me. And likewise with the in the arts, the it seems like people's trump card in terms of criticism is it's been done before.
Yeah.
And I think that's the least interesting comment you could possibly make.
Definitely.
If somebody comes up with an idea independently of somebody else,
Yeah.
it's equally unique and original. And I would like us to abandon this idea that of the first past the post artistic endeavour, that no, I can prove that somebody did it 2 years before then.
Yes.
And there are so many of these claims, and they're so unhelpful.
Yeah.
I mean, in early 20th century music, I was talking about Joseph Matthias Hauer. Well, a fellow Austrian, Arnold Schoenberg, invented this system of composing with the 12 notes equally. Well, Hauer just happened to come up with a similar method some years before, and then there are these arguments between people in favour of Hauer and Schoenberg. Who gives the toss? Actually, who wrote the most interesting music using that system? Not Hauer, not Schoenberg. It was people who sort of picked up on that idea and took it further. Mainly Anton Webern, another fellow Austrian. And, I think in hindsight, out of that whole group of composers, I think that most people would probably say that Webern made the most of it and turned it into something very unique and something very different from what had happened traditionally. So, that's my sort of motivation behind this book, really. That we don't have to hold on to this idea that a truth is a truth. A truth is an iteration of a truth, and every iteration is different. And we're holding on to these truths as ideas for as long as they're useful. That kind of thing. So,
I completely agree. I think that as a statement is a very strong statement, especially within the art world. I think there's there is that view of what came first and what is this referencing and all that kind of stuff, and it ignores the fact that as artists we can't help be interpretations of what is around us. It ignores the idea that you just ingest everything, regardless of whether you mean to or not.
Yeah, sure.
And the same with anything you create, you reference everything, because as human beings, that's what we do. So when you come along and you say, no, this idea is solidly this one person's idea, you refuse to accept that it's an organic process. And I think that's a very strong statement. And I think that's a good place to round this out to as well. Great. It's been lovely having you, Jim.
It's been really nice to be here. Thank you.
You can get Denizen's Handbook on Amazon.
Amazon, it's published under their self-publishing.
That's cool. And obviously we'll look out for any work which you're producing in the not this year maybe, but early next year, because this year just keeps flying.
If you look for me online, Sound Kiosk is the word. One word. Sound Kiosk.
And I think that's been lovely. I recommend reading it as well. As I say, I really enjoyed reading it. It's not something. I feel like it's not the kind of thing I would have picked up off the bat. It's not something, if I'd seen it online, I'd have gone, I'm curious what that is, unless I'd known your work prior.
Yeah, sure.
Because then it would be, I'm accenting the work which I've seen. But I recommend reading it. It's a very interesting read.
Thank you.
But thank you for coming, Jim.
Great.
With that, we'll talk to these guys later.
Fantastic.
How was it?